Zoe, as head of a company that is solar focused, you're facing a lot of headwinds. Talk to us about how you're leading the ship right now with all these headwinds. And are you sick of everybody saying headwinds?
The solar industry has been living with expiring tax credits for pretty much its entire existence. So the idea that there was a 10-year runway was always the anomaly. We know how to handle a world where there is fast changing policy environments. That's been true for solar from the very beginning. And you're not going to completely transform the way our economy makes and uses energy. You're up against some fairly entrenched interests. That was never going to be easy. And so the opportunities that are in front of us far outweigh the headwinds that we're looking at. Because the truth is, if you can just set the whole politics aside, our country, for the first time in a very long time, has massive load demand. There is a need for a new generation. No one forecasted that we were going to have this much load growth. And we are primed as the low cost. The LCOE for solar is low. We have 90% of the projects that are in current development in the queue. It is fast to build. And so if there's not a tax credit, it means that we need to be very focused on the fundamentals of building good projects. So gone are the days of developers making very high fees that we're paying when we're developing, when we're buying, because we're in the M&A market. We're buying projects, we're financing them, we're building them, we're owning and operating them. And so in some ways, this has all been an opportunity for us to sharpen our pencil and find very good quality projects with counterparties that are reasonable in how they're wanting to transact.
Tell me more about that. Are you finding that it's a candy store, or is it very competitive to make these acquisitions right now?
I would say that over the past several years, many of the European and Canadian entrants have been the biggest sources of capital and buyers of projects. Those companies have exited the US market. And so a company like CleanChoice historically may have had to pay more or pay more upfront in order to compete with some of those buyers that have a lower cost of capital than us. And with them exiting the market, there are a lot more opportunities that we're seeing than we have even a year ago. The other thing that I tell folks internally is one of the differentiators of CleanChoice is that we are a company that has a 13-year track record of selling energy to customers. We are a cash flowing business. We had gross revenue last year of $300 million. So we're not dependent on the cycle of developing and financing projects to fund our SG&A. We're able to be discerning and take a long view on what we want to do and ride out any possible storms because we have the support of the operating company.
Are you focusing on particular acquisitions right now, Zoe? Because you are distinct in that CleanChoice is both a retailer and a generator.
Yeah.
Are you focusing on one part of the business or the other?
We have to focus on both sides of the business. So 3 years ago, the company made the decision to update its strategy. So the original shareholders made the decision to bring in a larger partner that could help make a strategic pivot to owning and operating generation to match its retail load. There are other companies that do this, but these are all the big traditional companies like NRG and Vistra. And none of them have done that with 100% clean energy. So what we're doing is new to the market. And we found a great partner with True Green Capital to come in and back our vision. And we have focused that time on building out the team. And we have about a 400 megawatt portfolio now of projects that we have acquired and that we're under construction on now. We are very discerning about the kinds of projects that we want to buy because what we're doing is are replacing what would otherwise be a financial hedge with a physical hedge. So when our customers, particularly because the market for retail has moved more towards fixed price contracts, both in the regulatory environment and also because it's what consumers want. They want pricing certainty. So if we enter into a 2-year fixed contract with a customer, we have to forward buy essentially 2 years of energy to lock in pricing. That's a financial hedge. There is a cost associated with that. In order to, on a risk adjusted basis, truly replace that financial hedge, we have to build a solar farm in a location that the price of what we're selling energy into the market for matches in the time of day and season the cost of what the energy would have been for us to buy that for our retail load. And so we have, for example, taken all 14,000 nodes that is in our footprint and compared them on a 15-minute basis over a 2-year period with the 36 zones that we buy for our retail customers. And so we're able to clearly identify what are the top 20% of projects that are going to work as an effective hedge. And so that is one of the unique things that CleanChoice does is we are matching generation with our retail load. We're also looking at projects that have buildable sites. So they're not all broken up. You're not dealing with a lot of rock. We're trying to be in communities that want us to be there, that we're not facing a lot of community opposition. Because another distinction about CleanChoice is that we're doing this inside of a brand. And so to our customers, it's important that we build projects that are consistent with our values. And so we have something called the CleanChoice Promise that has a menu of options for how we plant seed. Are we using sheep to graze? Are we giving scholarships to communities? What is our landscaping plan? All of that goes into making sure that the quality of our sites is something that we can all be proud of.
You're targeting communities that are open to solar. Tell me more. Are you targeting geographic regions, specific states? And are you feeling economic outreach from certain states? Tell me about how you're selecting your sites.
Yeah. So again, we have this initial screening. We're only on the East Coast. So we're in all states that offer retail choice. So for the listeners who don't know, there are 14 states that you can choose where you buy your electricity for as a residential customer. Kind of like you can choose between Verizon and AT&T with your cell phone, you can choose who you buy your electricity from. We are not in Texas. That's the biggest market that we are not in. And so we are focused on PJM, ISO New York, and ISO New England.
Those are regional transmission organizations for those who don't know that acronym.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have sites that are on the northeastern part of North Carolina that actually hedge well to portions of our book. We're in Pennsylvania, all the way west to Illinois, and we're constructing new projects in New York, although we have not done anything in New England to date.
Talk to me about the community involvement and the economic development. Are you hearing people that are going, hey, we need solar because we're getting these manufacturers and data centers and we need the energy? States like Ohio, for example, they're really concerned about can they meet the growing demand for energy right now?
At the local level, all development is local. So there are relationships with county commissions, with communities. I would say that it has become more and more political. That has been very intentional on the parts of certain interests that have had a really solid ground game of creating community opposition with solar ordinances and moratoriums. It's interesting because I grew up in the North Carolina solar market. And North Carolina for a long time had bipartisan support for renewables because these communities saw solar as an opportunity to create tax base without having any additional expenses. They're not having to run sewage. They're not providing more schools. It's offering a property tax that is funding teachers, new fire trucks, updates to schools. And we were able to come up with solutions that were win-win for all parties. I would like to see that continue and be replicated. It continue in North Carolina and then replicated outside of the state. This really shouldn't be a political issue.
And yet it is. And there's also misinformation out there.
There's been a lot that's been researched and written about some of the campaigns to create disinformation. Part of that is having people from the area that are able to give the counter narrative inside of the community. That's really important. And that you reach out early and that you work collaboratively. I understand if I lived out and there was someone that was building a solar farm right in front of me and there was no landscaping that was going to be done and there's lots of industrial fencing around it, something that I would question as well. And so part of it is being good neighbors and creating something that a community can be proud of. We seek to continue to use the land in an agricultural way to preserve the land for future use. Going back to your earlier question, yes, there is opposition. There's federal permitting that is now a question. We avoid projects that would require any kind of federal permitting. That's how we manage that. There definitely is more opposition than there's ever been. There's no question about that.
Race is on for many projects to get done, and there's an anticipated drop off for solar. What are you doing?
We have an existing set of projects that meets about 1/3 of our current retail load. Another thing about CleanChoice that's a little different is that we're not an IPP that is looking to just build gigawatts upon gigawatts for that sake. We are building projects to serve a business to improve the performance of the business that we have. And so our mandate is to build quality. And we have enough to make an impact on our customer pricing. Really what we're trying to do is lock in. We think of it as a true cost of energy. What are the third-party expenses that are actually going out the door when you build a solar farm? Your OpEx, debt service, capital coupon payments. When you add all of that up and you divide it over the megawatt hours, that is the price of that energy. And we want that to be at or less than what the retail business would otherwise be paying for in the market into the future. And so as we're entering into a world of escalating energy prices, we're going to be able to compete because we'll have a price that has our cost of goods will be fixed. And so once we get to about 1/3 of our retail load, that starts to affect our customer pricing. And that's what we're looking to do. The next thing is, how do we have enough projects to factor in growth in our retail business to enable that growth? So we're looking to acquire projects that we can safe harbor before next year, the deadline in June of next year, 2026. And then there is a post-ITC pipeline. How are you going to build projects that can compete with the price of energy at that time? Our forecasts show the energy pricing is going to be going up.
Yours and pretty much everyone else's.
When you take away the ITC, you can in some ways replace that with the forecasted increases in energy that are coming. And the other focus is on self-development. So we are self-developing projects that will have a lower cost to develop. We're not going to be buying them from someone else. And we're self-developing projects that have a focus on the buildability. There is a huge variation in the cost to build a project based on site conditions. And so it might be that the ITC would have allowed for more projects to get built that would not have otherwise gotten built because of certain site conditions. And now you're going to have to be really focused on how those projects are going to be built and having strategic relationships with suppliers, your procurement strategy, how you're managing third-party EPC, managing budgets, and your cost of capital. So the other piece of it is that as we build more and as our business model is proved out, our cost of capital should come down.
That's a challenge. I would think, yes, I follow that, but yet you're focusing on quality, Zoe, with CleanChoice. And then you've got these tariffs. And most of solar parts have been coming from China.
And we are sourcing procurement using domestic content as much as we possibly can.
And how is that impacting price?
I mean, it does increase price. There are also questions around labor. So labor costs have come up, supply chain costs have come up even outside of the tariffs. We see somewhere between 10 and 15 cents of increased cost based on domestic content and meeting FIOC requirements and tariffs.
All right. You don't look like you're breaking into a sweat about it.
I mean, I remember the days when you could build a solar for 85 cents a watt, and now it's $1.50 for a large site. I mean, It's a brand new world, but the fun part about business is having a problem and solving it. And whether a business survives, thrives, how does a company flourish? It flourishes because the people on your team are really good at working together in a collaborative way to come up with creative solutions to the problems that you face.
Tell me more about that. What are you doing to lead your team right now to keep them working together, to keep them focused on moving forward?
Well, I think the first step is hiring great people to begin with. So one of the great things about having worked in this industry for so long is I do have a team of people that I've worked with in 3 different companies that have joined our efforts here at CleanChoice. And so there's an established working pattern and lots of trust and industry expertise. But then you want to have a diversity of thought, and so I really focus on making sure we are very clear about what is the role that we need, and being very efficient about defining that and making sure that we're keeping a tight group of people. It becomes challenging when you get above 50 people. You stop being able to easily communicate with one another. So this goes back to sustainably building. By having a smaller mandate, we can have a smaller team and we can more easily communicate.
And didn't you just this week have a big team collaboration throwdown?
Yeah, we had everybody come into our Washington, D.C. office and had a 2-day offsite where we talked about our priorities for next year and what needs to get done by the end of this year, and celebrated some of our wins together.
That's good.
Yeah, so hiring great people on the front end. And some of the things that I screen for is yes, experience, that always matters, but also what's on the inside. Is this the kind of person that is open to feedback, is open to change, is willing to set down defending their own limitations, and is oriented to life as an opportunity to grow? Because we spend the majority of our waking hours with our colleagues. And if we can't be in the kinds of relationships where we are receptive to growth and encouraging growth, everything stays stagnant. And so it's about creating the fertile soil of trust that enables people to sort of see what their limitations might be.
So you sound pretty optimistic. And as you may or may not know, we end every podcast with asking our guest, what are you energized about? What are you optimistic about going forward in this industry?
It's funny. I'm sitting here and I'm looking outside this window, and the sun is filtering through the trees, and the sky is blue. There's these beautiful white fluffy clouds, and I can kind of hear the sound of the birds in the distance and see the wind rippling through the leaves. What I'm optimistic about is that people fundamentally love one another and love our planet. And when you have a presence to what is sacred about life, then the rest of it is just figuring out problems together. So the reason I'm optimistic is because in some ways it is an absolute privilege to get to work in an industry that is furthering the health of the things that matter most to me.
And those are the planet, the people?
People, my family, my loved ones. And that's true for everybody. Yeah.
Oh, right. That was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I was with you, because right now I look out the window and all I hear are the sounds of leaf blowers. And I hope you haven't been hearing them. All right, Zoe, thank you very much.
All right. You have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.